My name is Daniela, and I'm 34. I never thought my financial independence would become a family battleground until my mother's 60th birthday dinner. As the first college graduate in our family and now a senior financial analyst, I thought I'd made my mother proud. Instead, her birthday toast revealed the disturbing truth about our relationship. The demand she made that night forced me to choose between my hard-earned success and my family's approval. If you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're from, hit that like and subscribe button, and stick around to hear how one dinner changed everything in my family forever. I grew up in a modest blue vinyl-sided house in Framingham, Massachusetts, with parents who worked hard but always seemed stressed about money. My mother, Sandra, was the undisputed head of our household, making every significant decision for our family of four. My father, Thomas, a quiet man who worked as a mechanic at the local garage, typically deferred to her judgment, preferring peace over confrontation. My brother Jason was 3 years older and easily fell into the role of golden child. He mirrored our mother's opinions and values, becoming her strongest ally and confidant. While I struggled against her constant need for control, Jason thrived under her attention, gladly following the path she laid out for him. From my earliest memories, I knew our family operated differently from others. At 8 years old, when I received $20 from my grandmother for my birthday, my mother immediately took it, saying, "This goes into the family fund, Daniela. We all contribute to the greater good here." When I asked what the family fund was used for, she simply said, "Things we need as a family. You'll understand when you're older." By 12, I was babysitting for neighbors, earning about $30 a week. Like clockwork, my mother would be waiting when I got home, hand extended. 70% to the family fund, she would say, allowing me to keep just $9 of my earnings. Jason, who mowed lawns and shoveled driveways, seemed proud to hand over his money completely. "Mom knows what's best for all of us," he would say, shooting me disapproving looks when I questioned the arrangement. School became my refuge and eventual ticket to freedom. While my mother controlled virtually every aspect of my home life, from the clothes I wore to the friends I could see, she couldn't argue with academic achievement. When I brought home straight A's, even she had to acknowledge my success, though she quickly took credit for it. "You got your brains from me," she would tell anyone who would listen. I always knew Daniela could achieve if she applied herself to the right things. My high school guidance counselor became my secret ally, helping me apply to colleges and for scholarships without my mother's knowledge. When the acceptance letter from Boston University came with a substantial financial aid package, I finally saw my path to independence. The fight that followed was explosive. My mother couldn't understand why I would choose to waste money on more school when I could get a job locally and continue contributing to the family. My father, in a rare moment of intervention, quietly supported my decision, which only further enraged her. "You're choosing yourself over your family," she accused, tears streaming down her face, "after everything we've done for you." Jason sided with her completely. "You've always been selfish, Daniela. Mom and Dad sacrificed everything for us, and this is how you repay them." I left for college with my mother's cold silence and brother's disapproval weighing heavily on me. My father hugged me goodbye when she wasn't looking and slipped me $200. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. "Call when you can." College was transformative but challenging. I worked 3 part-time jobs while maintaining a full course load. I waited tables, stocked shelves at the campus bookstore, and tutored other students in mathematics. Every penny I earned went toward my expenses, with nothing left to send home, which became another point of contention during holiday visits. "So successful now that you've forgotten where you came from," my mother would say sarcastically. "Too important to help your family." Despite her cutting remarks, I graduated with honors, securing a position at a financial services firm in downtown Boston. Starting as an analyst assistant, I earned a modest salary, but finally had true financial independence. I found a tiny apartment with 2 roommates and began building my life on my own terms. My relationship with my family remained strained, but stabilized into a pattern of obligatory holiday visits and occasional Sunday dinners. My mother always made a point of asking about my salary and seeming disappointed by my answers regardless of the figure. Jason, who worked at my father's garage and still lived at home, would smirk at these exchanges, secure in his position as the loyal child. 4 years into my career, I received a significant promotion to senior financial analyst, boosting my monthly salary to $5,500. It was a proud moment, the culmination of countless late nights and sacrificed weekends. When my father called to check in, I shared the news with him. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," he said, genuine warmth in his voice. "You've worked hard for this." 3 days later, my mother called to inform me she was planning her 60th birthday celebration and expected my attendance. "It's at the Harborview restaurant next Saturday," she said, naming one of the most expensive venues in Boston. 7 o'clock sharp, and dress appropriately, Daniela. Your cousin Amanda will be there with her husband, and you know how nice she always looks." The mention of my cousin Amanda stung slightly. Throughout childhood, my mother had held up Amanda as everything I should aspire to be, praising her conventional choices, particularly her early marriage to her college boyfriend Stephen. "I'll be there," I promised, already dreading the evening, but knowing absence wasn't an option. As the call ended, I wondered if my father had mentioned my promotion to her. Something in her tone felt calculated, as though she'd been sitting on information and planning her next move. I dismissed the thought as paranoia, a remnant of our complicated history. How could I know her birthday celebration would become the battleground for my financial freedom? The day of my mother's 60th birthday arrived with an unseasonably warm April sun and a knot of anxiety in my stomach that no amount of morning coffee could dissolve. I spent extra time getting ready, knowing my appearance would be scrutinized. I chose a navy blue dress that projected professional success without seeming flashy, paired with modest pearl earrings that had been a gift to myself after my promotion. The Harborview restaurant occupied the top floor of one of Boston's sleek waterfront buildings with panoramic views of the harbor and a reputation for excellent seafood at exorbitant prices. As I handed my car keys to the valet, I calculated that the evening would likely cost my mother several $1,000s, an unusual extravagance for someone who had always stressed frugality at home. Inside, I was directed to a private dining room where about 20 people were already gathered. My mother stood near the center, resplendent in a silver dress that caught the light as she moved between guests. She spotted me immediately, her face arranging itself into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Daniela, finally," she said, leaning in for an air kiss near my cheek. "I was beginning to think you might be too busy for your mother's birthday." "I'm 15 minutes early, Mom," I replied, checking my watch. "Happy birthday." She gave me a quick once-over. "You look thin. Are they working you too hard at that firm?" Before I could respond, my brother Jason appeared at her side, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. At 37, he had begun to develop our father's stocky build, but carried himself with our mother's confident authority. "Little sister," he greeted me with a tight smile. "Good to see you made time for family." There was something rehearsed about their welcome, an underlying current I couldn't quite identify. I scanned the room for my father and found him standing awkwardly by the bar, nursing what appeared to be a club soda. When our eyes met, he gave me a small, almost apologetic smile. I made my way to him, accepting a glass of wine from a passing server. "Dad," I said, kissing his cheek. "How are you?" "Good to see you, Daniela," he said, his voice low. "You look well. Success suits you." "Thanks," I replied, noticing the new lines around his eyes, the slight stoop to his shoulders that hadn't been there at Christmas. "Everything okay with you?" He glanced toward my mother, who was now deep in conversation with my Aunt Patricia. Fine. Just tired. Shop's been busy." Before I could press further, my cousin Amanda approached. Unlike the polished, confident woman my mother always described, she looked tired, her designer dress hanging slightly loose on her frame. "Daniela," she said, embracing me with surprising warmth, "it's been ages. Mom says you're doing amazingly well at your firm." "It's going well," I acknowledged, studying her more closely. "How about you? How's Stephen and the real estate business?" A shadow crossed her face. "That's complicated. The market's been difficult. We had to downsize our home last year." She lowered her voice. "Between us, I've been thinking about going back to work, but don't mention it to Aunt Sandra. She still thinks we're living the dream." This confession surprised me. Amanda's perfect life had been held up as the gold standard throughout my childhood, her choices validated while mine were questioned. The revelation that she was struggling financially while I was thriving seemed like a cosmic rebalancing. Our conversation was interrupted by the arrival of more family members, including my father's brother, Uncle David, and his wife, who immediately commented on my professional appearance. "Look at our little Daniela all grown up and corporate," Aunt Meredith said, her voice carrying. "Sandra tells us you're making quite the salary these days." The comment raised a flag in my mind. Why was my mother discussing my salary with extended family? I smiled non-committally and excused myself to greet other relatives. Throughout the next hour, I noticed several hushed conversations between my mother and Jason, their heads bent together, occasionally glancing in my direction. Twice I caught fragments of their exchange, nothing substantive, but enough to heighten my unease. "She won't understand the necessity," I overheard my mother whisper. "She'll come around," Jason assured her. "Family is family." When we were finally seated for dinner, I found myself placed at the main table between my father and Amanda, directly across from my mother and Jason. The table was adorned with elaborate floral arrangements and fine china that must have cost a small fortune. As appetizers were served, my father leaned toward me. "Your mother has been planning this night for months," he said quietly. "She has some ideas about the future she wants to share." "What kind of ideas?" I asked. He hesitated. "It's not my place to say. Just try to keep an open mind, Daniela. Family is complicated." The meal progressed through multiple lavish courses, each accompanied by expensive wine pairings that seemed unnecessary for a family gathering. I noticed my mother barely touched her food, instead watching the table with the intensity of a general surveying troops before battle. When the dessert dishes were cleared and coffee was served, my mother signaled to a waiter who appeared with a bottle of champagne. As glasses were distributed around the table, she stood commanding the attention of the room with practiced ease. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she began, her voice steady and clear. "Reaching 60 years is a milestone that makes you reflect on what truly matters in life." She paused, her gaze sweeping the room before settling on me. "And what matters, what has always mattered, is family. The unbreakable bonds that sustain us through life's challenges. The loyalty that keeps us together when the world would pull us apart." Around the table, heads nodded in agreement. My father stared into his champagne glass, suddenly fascinated by the rising bubbles. "We Caldwells have always supported each other," my mother continued. "Through good times and bad, we've pooled our resources and faced life as a united front. That tradition of mutual support is what I want to strengthen as I enter this new decade of my life." She raised her glass higher. "Which is why I'm so grateful for the success of my children, particularly Daniela, whose recent promotion has been a blessing to us all." I froze champagne halfway to my lips. A sick feeling began to form in the pit of my stomach. "Starting today," she announced, her eyes locked on mine, "your $5,500 paycheck and all future bonuses will go directly to the family fund, as Jason's income has for years. We've already spoken to your HR department about setting up the direct deposit." The room fell into stunned silence. I stared at her, certain I had misheard. "If you disagree," she continued, her voice hardening slightly, "then perhaps it's best you don't come back. This family operates as a unit, not as individuals pursuing their own interests at the expense of the whole." Jason nodded beside her, his expression solemn and self-righteous. Around the table, relatives shifted uncomfortably, some avoiding my gaze while others watched with undisguised curiosity. "You're not serious," I whispered, shock giving way to a surge of anger and betrayal. My mother's smile remained fixed, her eyes challenging. "I've never been more serious, Daniela. It's time you fully rejoined the family and contributed your fair share. Jason agrees, don't you, son?" My brother nodded again. "It's the right thing to do, Daniela. We all benefit when we pool our resources." I looked to my father for support, but he was staring at his plate, his shoulders hunched in silent resignation. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity the dynamic that had shaped our family for decades, the control disguised as care, the manipulation masked as family values. Without a word, I placed my napkin on the table, stood up, and walked out of the private dining room. Behind me, I heard my mother's voice rise. "Daniela, don't you dare walk away from this family." I kept walking through the main restaurant where diners turned to stare past the host stand, where the maitre d' called after me, and into the cool evening air. The valet rushed to retrieve my car, perhaps sensing my urgency. As I drove home through the darkening streets of Boston, tears blurred my vision, but a strange sense of relief was beginning to replace the shock. For years I had tried to balance independence with family loyalty, never quite understanding why it felt so difficult. Now finally the truth was undeniable in my mother's eyes. My value was measured not by who I was, but by what I could provide. I barely remember the drive home from the restaurant. The city lights blurred past my windshield, distorted by tears I refused to fully release. By the time I pulled into my apartment building's parking garage, my hands were cramped from gripping the steering wheel and my jaw ached from clenching. Inside my apartment, I kicked off my heels and collapsed onto my couch, finally allowing the full weight of what had just happened to settle over me. My own mother had publicly demanded my entire income, had somehow believed she was entitled to the fruits of my hard work. And my brother, the perfect son, had supported her completely. My phone buzzed with incoming texts first from extended family members, from Aunt Patricia. "That was uncomfortable. Are you okay? Call me tomorrow." From Cousin Amanda. "I had no idea she was going to do that. So inappropriate. Let me know if you want to talk." Then came the messages from my immediate family. From Jason. "You embarrassed Mom on her birthday. We need to talk about your responsibilities to this family." From Dad. "Please call when you can. Your mother is upset." I turned off my phone, needing space to think clearly without their voices in my head. For years I had normalized my mother's control, had accepted her behavior as strict parenting rather than recognizing it for what it was, financial abuse. Tonight had simply been the most extreme manifestation of a pattern established in my childhood. After a hot shower and a cup of strong tea, I found my analytical mind reasserting itself. The financial analyst in me needed to assess the situation objectively. What exactly had my mother claimed? She mentioned speaking to my HR department, which was deeply concerning. Had she actually attempted to redirect my direct deposit? I booted up my laptop and logged into my bank account, relieved to see no changes to my recent deposits. Next, I checked my email, searching for any communications from HR. Finding nothing, I drafted a quick email to my HR director, Beth. "I need to verify that my direct deposit information remains unchanged. If anyone has contacted you regarding changes to my account, please disregard and alert me immediately. This is urgent." I hit send, then considered my mother's mention of a family fund. Throughout my childhood, this mysterious fund had been invoked whenever money was taken from me, yet I had never seen any accounting of how those funds were used. What exactly had happened to all the money I had contributed as a child and teenager? A new disturbing thought struck me. If my mother was desperate enough to publicly demand my entire income, something significant must be happening with the family finances. This wasn't just about control anymore. This was about money, possibly a lot of it. I was midway through these calculations when my phone, which I had turned back on to check emails, began ringing. My father's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. "Dad." "Daniela, thank God," he said, his voice strained. "We have a situation here. Your mother she's not well." In the background, I could hear raised voices, including my mother's distinctive tone, though I couldn't make out the words. "What's going on?" I asked, steeling myself. He lowered his voice. "There are things you don't know, Daniela. Financial things. Your mother has made some decisions that have put us in a difficult position, and when she found out about your promotion..." He trailed off. "What kind of decisions, Dad? What's happening?" He sighed heavily. "The house is mortgaged to the hilt. Credit cards maxed out. She's been borrowing from your Uncle David for years, and now he wants his money back." "How much are we talking about?" I pressed. "Over 200,000, he admitted, his voice breaking slightly. "Maybe more. I don't even know the full extent anymore. She handles all the finances." The figure stunned me. My parents' house couldn't be worth more than 350,000 in their neighborhood. If they owed 200,000 beyond the original mortgage, they were underwater financially. "And let me guess," I said, the pieces falling into place. "She was counting on my income to bail her out." "She already promised your Uncle David payments based on your new salary," he confirmed. "She told him it was arranged." The audacity was breathtaking. Not only had my mother planned to appropriate my income, but she had already committed it to paying off debts I knew nothing about. "Dad, I can't fix this," I said firmly, "and I won't hand over my paycheck to cover debts I didn't create." "I know," he said quietly. "I shouldn't have let it get this far. But she's your mother, Daniela. She's desperate." "Being desperate doesn't give her the right to my money," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "I need to understand the whole situation before I can even think about how to help, and that help will never involve giving her control of my finances." There was a pause, then a commotion in the background. My mother's voice grew louder, and suddenly she was on the phone. "Daniela, you need to come back here right now," she demanded, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. "We are in crisis, and you're acting like a selfish child." "I'm not coming tonight, Mom," I said, "and I'm not giving you my paycheck. Not now, not ever." "After everything we've done for you," she hissed, You were nothing before we made you who you are. You owe us everything." The familiar guilt trip washed over me, but this time it didn't take hold. "I worked for everything I have, Mom. 3 jobs through college, countless late nights at the office. I earned my success." "Your success," she scoffed. "You think you're so special because you wear nice clothes and work in a fancy office? Family is what matters, Daniela. Loyalty. Clearly you have none." "Loyalty goes both ways," I responded. "And respect does too. You've shown me neither tonight." She began to cry, then the tears seeming to arrive on cue. "I don't know what we're going to do. Jason has given everything he can. Your father's business is struggling. We could lose the house." I closed my eyes, recognizing the manipulation, but still feeling its pull. "I'll call tomorrow when everyone's calmer. We can discuss options then." "Options?" she cried. "The only option is for you to help your family. Uncle David is threatening to take legal action if we don't start payments next week." In the background, I heard Jason take the phone. "You've got to fix this, Daniela," he said, accusation heavy in his voice. "Mom is completely distraught. This is your fault." "My fault?" I echoed in disbelief. "I didn't create this debt, Jason, and I didn't promise my money to anyone." "We're family," he insisted, as though that single word should override all other considerations. "We stick together. Mom has always had a plan for all of us, and it's worked. You're the only one breaking ranks." I thought about the garage where he worked alongside our father, the house where he still lived with our parents, the life that had been prescribed for him, that he had accepted without question. For the first time, I wondered if his loyalty to our mother came from genuine agreement or from never having developed the tools to imagine an alternative. "I'll call tomorrow," I repeated firmly. "Right now, I need space to think." "If you hang up," he warned, "don't bother calling back. You're either with this family or you're not." It was the same black and white thinking that had dominated our household for years, the false choice between total submission and complete rejection. I had lived too long in the gray areas between to accept such an ultimatum. "Goodbye, Jason. Tell Dad I'll call him tomorrow." I ended the call and immediately silenced my phone as it began ringing again. For the next hour, notifications continued to light up my screen, text messages and voicemails accumulating like evidence of a life I was rapidly outgrowing. Eventually, I turned my attention back to my laptop. Before I could help anyone else, I needed to ensure my own financial security. I changed passwords on all my accounts, contacted my bank to place alerts on any attempted changes, and drafted another email to HR explicitly stating that no changes to my payroll information should be made without my in-person verification. As midnight approached, I finally felt the adrenaline of the evening beginning to subside, replaced by a profound sadness. The family I had always tried to please despite our differences had shown their true priorities tonight. My value to them was measured in dollars, not love. I crawled into bed emotionally exhausted, but strangely clear-headed. Tomorrow would bring difficult conversations and painful decisions, but for tonight I had drawn a line that should have been drawn years ago. My life and my earnings were my own, not collateral for my mother's financial mismanagement. As I drifted towards sleep, I realized that while I had left a birthday party tonight, I had also left behind a pattern of manipulation that had defined most of my life. The thought brought both grief and the first tendrils of liberation. The next morning, I woke to 37 missed calls and 28 text messages. Most were from my mother and Jason, their tone evolving from anger to panic to wounded victimhood as the night progressed. 3 were from my father, each one more apologetic and concerned than the last. The final one, sent at 4:30 in the morning, simply read, "Please call when you can. Things are worse than I knew. Love, Dad." I had just finished my first cup of coffee when my email pinged with a response from Beth in HR. "Daniela, thank you for your email. Yes, we did receive a call yesterday from someone claiming to be your mother, requesting information about redirecting your direct deposit. As per company policy, we explained that we can only make such changes with your direct written authorization and proper identification. No changes have been made to your account. Should I flag your file with additional security measures?" The confirmation of my mother's attempted interference sent a chill through me. This wasn't just an empty threat made in the heat of the moment. She had actually tried to redirect my salary without my knowledge or consent. I replied immediately, requesting the additional security and thanking Beth for her diligence. After a quick shower, I called the one person I knew would give me honest perspective without judgment, my friend Lauren from college. She had met my family several times and had always seemed to sense the undercurrents I tried to ignore. "She did what?" Lauren exclaimed when I recounted the previous night's events. "Daniela, that's not just controlling, that's potentially illegal. She tried to divert your income." "I know," I sighed. "The thing is, I think they're in real financial trouble. My dad mentioned significant debt." "That's not your responsibility," Lauren said firmly. "You can choose to help them if you want, but on your terms, not by handing over control of your finances." "I keep thinking about all those years she took my babysitting money for the family fund," I admitted. "I wonder how much of that actually went to family expenses, and how much went to whatever spending habits created this mess." Lauren was quiet for a moment. "Have you ever thought about talking to a therapist about your family dynamics? From everything you've told me over the years, what your mother does goes beyond strict parenting. It's financial abuse, Daniela." The term landed heavily. Financial abuse. I had applied it to romantic relationships in my professional analysis, recognizing patterns where one partner controlled the other through money. Why had I never seen the same pattern in my own upbringing? "You're right," I acknowledged. "But right now I need to figure out what's actually happening with their finances before I can decide how or if to help." "Just be careful," Lauren cautioned. "From what you've told me, your mother sees you as a resource, not as an autonomous adult with your own life. Set boundaries and stick to them." After our call, I steeled myself and dialed my father's number. He answered immediately. "Daniela, thank God. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Dad," I assured him. "But we need to talk honestly about what's going on. No more vague references to financial trouble. I want details." He hesitated. "It's complicated, and your mother doesn't want me discussing it with you." "Dad," I said firmly, "she tried to redirect my salary without my consent. She made financial commitments using my money without even asking me. I think we're well past keeping her secrets." He sighed deeply. "You're right. Can you meet me?" "Not at the house. Maybe that coffee shop near your office. I can be there in an hour." I agreed, sensing he needed the privacy to speak freely away from my mother's influence. An hour later, I sat across from him at a quiet corner table, watching him nervously shred a napkin as he gathered his thoughts. "Your mother has always been well creative with finances," he began hesitantly. "When we were first married, it was small things. A credit card I didn't know about. Shopping trips she'd hide the receipts from. I thought it was just normal stuff, you know." I nodded, encouraging him to continue. "After you kids came along, money got tighter. I thought we were budgeting, cutting back where needed. But your mother—" He shook his head. "She kept up appearances no matter what. New clothes, nice gifts for family, that big trip to Disney when you were 10. "I remember," I said softly. The trip had been a surprise, one rare happy memory amidst often tense family dynamics. "That trip was on credit cards," he admitted. "Cards I didn't know we had until collectors started calling a year later." As he continued, a pattern emerged of decades of financial mismanagement, hidden accounts, loans from family members, second and third mortgages on the house, all orchestrated by my mother, while my father remained willfully ignorant, preferring peace to confrontation. "The family fund you kids contributed to," he said, looking particularly ashamed, "was supposed to be for your college educations. But as far as I can tell, that money went to paying minimum balances on cards covering the mortgage when we fell behind keeping up appearances." "How much total debt are we talking about, Dad?" I asked the financial analyst in me, needing concrete figures. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket and slid it across the table. It was a handwritten list of debts that totaled just over $240,000, not including the primary mortgage on the house. "And this is accurate. There's nothing else she's hiding." He shrugged helplessly. "This is what I've pieced together from statements I've found. But honestly, Daniela, there could be more. Your mother has become quite skilled at hiding financial information from me." "What about Jason?" I asked. "The way Mom talked, it sounded like he's been contributing significantly." My father looked uncomfortable. "Jason gives his entire paycheck to your mother, has for years. But the garage isn't doing well, Daniela. Hasn't been for a while. I've had to cut his hours, which means less money coming in. He doesn't know the full extent of the financial problems either. Your mother shields him from it." This revelation was surprising. I had always assumed Jason was fully informed, a willing co-conspirator in my mother's financial schemes. The idea that he, too, was partially in the dark shifted my perspective slightly. "So when Mom found out about my promotion," I began, "she saw it as the solution to everything," my father finished. With your new salary, she could make the minimum payments keep everyone at bay. When she told your Uncle David she had secured additional family income, he backed off his threats of legal action temporarily. And now he's called 3 times since last night demanding to know what happened. Your mother is in a complete state alternating between rage and despair. She's convinced you'll change your mind. I sat back processing everything. I want to help Dad, but not like this. Not by handing over control of my finances to someone who's proven she can't manage money responsibly. I understand, he said, genuine regret in his eyes. I should have protected you kids better. Should have taken control of the situation years ago. It's not too late, I assured him, reaching across the table to cover his hand with mine. But any help I provide will come with conditions. Real changes need to happen. He nodded slowly. I don't know if your mother will accept that. She's never had to answer to anyone about money. It's always been her domain. Then she'll have to learn, I said with newfound resolve, because I won't participate in continuing this cycle. As we parted outside the coffee shop, my father hugged me tightly. I'm proud of who you've become, Daniela. Strong, independent. Don't let us drag you down. His words strengthened my determination. I would help my family, but on terms that would break this toxic pattern, not perpetuate it. I spent the afternoon consulting with a financial advisor friend who specialized in debt management, gathering information about options for my parents' situation. By evening, I had a preliminary plan, one that would require significant lifestyle changes for my parents, but could potentially save their house and restore their financial stability over time. I was reviewing these notes when my doorbell rang unexpectedly. When I checked through the peephole, I was shocked to see both my mother and brother standing in the hallway. My mother's normally perfect appearance was disheveled, her eyes red-rimmed. Jason stood slightly behind her, his expression a mixture of anger and concern. With a deep breath, I opened the door. The time for avoidance had passed. Now was the moment for truth. I opened my apartment door, bracing myself for the confrontation to come. My mother pushed past me without waiting for an invitation, her silver hair disheveled and her makeup smudged. Jason followed, giving me a cold look as he passed. So this is where all your money goes, my mother commented, scanning my modest apartment with obvious disapproval. Expensive downtown living while your family struggles. Hello to you too, Mom, I replied, closing the door. I wasn't expecting you. Clearly, she snapped. Since you've been ignoring our calls, do you have any idea what you've done? Uncle David is threatening legal action. We could lose everything. I gestured to my living room sofa. Why don't we sit down and discuss this calmly? Calmly, Jason interjected. Our family is in crisis, and you're suggesting we chat calmly. This is exactly the selfish attitude that's causing problems. I met with Dad today, I said, choosing to ignore his accusation. He showed me the list of debts. $240,000, Mom. How did it get this bad? My mother's face flushed. Your father had no right to share that information with you. Family finances are private. They stopped being private when you tried to redirect my salary, I countered. That made me an unwilling participant in whatever financial mess you've created. Created? She echoed incredulously. I've kept this family afloat for decades while your father under-earned and you kids needed constant support. Everything I've done has been for this family. The Disney trip when I was 10, I said. Was that for the family? The new car every 3 years. The country club membership you maintained even when Dad's hours got cut. We have a position to maintain, she insisted. Appearances matter. You wouldn't understand because you've always been happy to look like the poor relation. Some of us have standards. Jason shifted uncomfortably beside her, and I noticed for the first time a flash of doubt cross his face. Mom, maybe we should focus on solutions right now, not justifications, he suggested cautiously. She turned on him immediately. Are you taking her side now, after everything I've done for you? I'm not taking sides. He backpedaled quickly. I just think we need to focus on fixing the immediate problem. I took advantage of the opening. I agree, and I'm willing to help, but not by handing over my entire paycheck with no accountability or end date. What other option is there? My mother demanded. The creditors want payments now. Uncle David has already consulted a lawyer. I've been working on a plan, I said, retrieving my notes from the kitchen counter. It would require significant changes, but it could work. I outlined the strategy I had developed with my financial advisor friend, a structured debt consolidation program, potential bankruptcy protection for certain debts, a strict budget, the sale of non-essential assets, and yes, some financial assistance from me, but in the form of direct payments to creditors, not blank checks to my mother. And as part of this, I concluded, there would need to be complete financial transparency. No more hidden accounts, no more secret credit cards. My mother had grown increasingly rigid as I spoke, her face a mask of indignation. So you want to take over, control everything, humiliate me by forcing me to account for every penny like a child. No, Mom, I want to help you develop a sustainable financial future. What you've been doing clearly isn't working. This is insulting, she declared, standing abruptly. I've managed this family's finances for 40 years. And now we're $250,000 in debt. I pointed out, my patience thinning. So clearly something needs to change. Jason, who had been unusually quiet during my presentation, finally spoke. Some of these suggestions actually make sense, Mom. The debt consolidation especially. It would give us breathing room. She whirled on him. To Jason, after all I've done to protect you. Protect me from what? He asked, genuine confusion in his voice. From knowing how bad things really are, she exclaimed, then immediately looked like she regretted the outburst. A heavy silence fell over the room. Jason looked from our mother to me and back again, realization slowly dawning on his face. What don't I know? He asked quietly. My mother attempted to backtrack. Nothing that concerns you, dear. Just some temporary financial setbacks that Daniela is blowing out of proportion. Tell him the truth, Mom, I insisted. He deserves to know what he's been contributing his paychecks to all these years. She shot me a venomous look, but seemed to recognize she was cornered. With obvious reluctance, she began to admit to Jason what our father had revealed to me, the multiple mortgages, maxed-out credit cards, personal loans from family members, all hidden behind a facade of financial stability. As she spoke, I watched my brother's face transform shock, giving way to hurt and then anger. By the time she finished her heavily edited version of events, his hands were clenched into fists on his knees. So when you told me my contributions were being invested for the family's future, he said slowly, that was a lie. The money just went to minimum payments on debts I didn't even know about. I was protecting you from worry, she insisted. Someone had to keep this family functioning. By lying to us, he challenged, an unprecedented defiance in his tone. By pretending everything was fine while digging us deeper into debt. Don't you take that tone with me, she snapped. I am still your mother. Everything I did was for this family. Was Macy's for the family? I asked quietly. The spa weekends, the designer shoes. My mother's head snapped toward me. You've been spying on my accounts. Dad showed me the credit card statements, I clarified. The ones you thought he didn't know about. Jason stood suddenly. I need some air, he declared, moving toward the door. I can't process this right now. Jason, wait, our mother called, panic edging into her voice. We need to present a united front. Family comes first, remember. He paused at the door, his back to us. Family shouldn't lie to each other, Mom. That's the first rule of unity. After he left, my mother collapsed back onto the sofa, suddenly looking every one of her 60 years. Now look what you've done, she accused me. Turned your brother against me too. I didn't turn anyone against you, I replied, exhaustion settling into my bones. I just insisted on the truth. The truth, she scoffed. The truth is that I've sacrificed everything for this family, made all the hard decisions, carried all the burden, while your father played with cars and you children pursued your own interests. Nobody ever asked how I was managing it all. Nobody cared as long as the bills were paid and life was comfortable. For the first time, I glimpsed something beneath my mother's controlling exterior, a hint of the pressure she had placed on herself as family matriarch. It didn't excuse her actions, but it helped me understand them a little better. Mom, I said, softening slightly, you didn't have to do it all alone. That was your choice. And now we're all paying for it. So what happens now? She asked, suddenly sounding defeated. You implement your precious plan. Take over everything. Make me accountable to my own daughter. What happens now is your choice, I told her. I'm offering help, but with conditions. Real change, real transparency. Or you can refuse my help and try to find another solution. But either way, I will not be handing over my paycheck to continue a cycle of financial mismanagement. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. I don't know how to live any other way, she finally admitted in a small voice. This has been my role for so long. Then maybe it's time to learn a new role, I suggested. One that involves partnership instead of control, transparency instead of secrets. She looked up at me, a complex mixture of emotions playing across her face, pride and fear, and something that might have been a grudging respect. "You always were the stubborn one," she said almost to herself. "Even as a little girl, you questioned everything." "I learned to think for myself," I acknowledged, "which is something you taught me whether you meant to or not." We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of decades of financial deception and family dynamics hanging between us. Finally, my mother stood smoothing her wrinkled blouse with dignity. "I need time to think," she declared. "This is overwhelming." "Take the time you need," I replied. "But Uncle David and the other creditors won't wait forever. We need to start addressing this situation soon." She nodded stiffly. "I'll call you tomorrow," she said, moving toward the door. At the threshold, she paused. "Daniela?" "Yes." "Your father was right about one thing," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "You did become strong, independent." Coming from my mother, it was as close to an acknowledgement of my worth beyond my financial utility as I was likely to get. I accepted it with a small nod. After she left, I sat alone in my apartment processing the explosive confrontation. For the first time in my adult life, I had stood my ground with my mother and brother, refusing to be manipulated or guilted into sacrificing my financial security. The victory felt hollow in the face of my family's distress, but I knew it was a necessary first step toward healthier relationships for all of us. My phone buzzed with a text from Jason. "I need to talk more about this. Alone. Lunch tomorrow." I replied with a simple yes, wondering if this crisis might actually create an opportunity for my brother and I to develop a relationship independent of our mother's influence. As night fell over Boston, I felt both emotionally drained and strangely liberated. The family secrets were finally in the open, painful as that exposure might be. What would emerge from this crisis remained to be seen, but one thing was certain: I would never again allow my hard-earned financial independence to be compromised, not even in the name of family loyalty. The morning after the confrontation in my apartment, I woke feeling surprisingly clear-headed. The emotional turmoil of the past 2 days had burned away years of uncertainty about my place in the family and my right to my own resources. For the first time, I had confronted the manipulation directly, instead of making excuses or compromising my boundaries to keep peace. I arrived early for my lunch with Jason, choosing a quiet pub near his workplace. When he walked in, I was struck by how different he looked, as though the revelations about our mother had physically affected him. His shoulders were slumped, and the perpetual self-assured expression he typically wore had been replaced by something more vulnerable. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "Of course," I replied. "How are you doing?" He shook his head slowly. "Honestly, I'm reeling. I keep going back through conversations with Mom over the years, seeing them in a new light. All those times she talked about investing my contributions for the family's future." He trailed off, pain evident in his expression. "I know," I said gently. "It's a lot to process." "I've given her my entire paycheck since I started working at 18, he continued, his voice hollow. $1,200 a month for 19 years. That's over $270,000, Daniela, and I have nothing to show for it. No savings, no investments, nothing." The calculation stunned me. I had known Jason contributed significantly, but hearing the total sum laid bare was shocking. "I'm so sorry, Jason. I had no idea it was that much." "I believed her," he said, anger finally breaking through. "When she said we needed to stick together, that family comes first. When she criticized you for being selfish, I agreed with her. God, I've been such a fool." "You weren't a fool," I countered. "You were loyal to the family values Mom instilled in us. That's not a character flaw. But you saw through it," he pointed out. "You questioned. You built your own life." "And I've carried guilt about that for years," I admitted, wondering if maybe you and Mom were right that I was selfish for wanting financial independence. The waiter interrupted to take our orders, providing a moment for both of us to compose ourselves. When he left, Jason leaned forward, his expression serious. "I went to the bank this morning," he said quietly. "Opened my own account for the first time in my adult life. Mom always said it was wasteful to have separate accounts when we could pool resources." "That's a big step," I acknowledged, genuinely proud of him. "How did it feel?" "Terrifying," he admitted with a weak smile. "And exhilarating. I'm 37 years old, and I just now opened my first independent bank account. That's not normal, is it? Our family dynamics haven't exactly been normal, I said diplomatically. He nodded slowly. I spoke to Dad, too, after I left your place last night. He filled in more details about the financial situation. It's even worse than Mom admitted. Dad said he's been sleeping in the garage some nights when her spending rages get bad. This was news to me. Spending rages. Apparently, when Mom gets really stressed, she goes on these massive shopping sprees. Dad said it's been happening for decades, but it's gotten worse in recent years. He paused. He thinks she might need professional help, Daniela, like psychological help. I considered this. The pattern certainly suggested compulsive behavior that went beyond normal financial mismanagement. That actually makes sense. It might explain why the situation has spiraled so out of control. The thing is, Jason continued, lowering his voice, I don't think she'll agree to any help. When I suggested something similar this morning, she acted like I had betrayed her completely, said I was conspiring with you against her. That doesn't surprise me. I sighed. Accountability has never been her strong suit. I told her I wouldn't be depositing my next paycheck into the joint account. He said, a hint of pride in his voice. She didn't take it well. Our food arrived and we ate in companionable silence for a few minutes, both processing the massive shift in our relationship. For years, Jason had been my mother's ally, often her enforcer when it came to family expectations. Now suddenly we were on the same side, both reeling from revelations about the family dynamics we had accepted as normal. So what happens now? He finally asked. With the debts, I mean. Uncle David called me this morning asking if I knew what was going on. He sounded pretty upset. I've put together a debt management plan, I explained, outlining the key points I had shared with our mother. It won't be easy, but it's doable if everyone commits to it. And if Mom refuses, I had been considering this possibility since the confrontation in my apartment. Then Dad has options. They could sell the house, use the equity to pay down the highest interest debts. They might need to consider bankruptcy for the rest. It would be difficult, but not impossible. Would you still help them? He asked, studying me carefully. Even if Mom rejects your conditions. I would help Dad, I clarified. But I won't enable Mom's financial behavior anymore. That's not actually helping her, it's just prolonging the problem. Jason nodded thoughtfully. I think I need to do the same. Set boundaries, I mean. It's just... He hesitated. I've never really done that before. Not with her. It's not easy, I acknowledged. But it's necessary for all of us, including Mom. As our lunch concluded, Jason surprised me by reaching across the table to grasp my hand briefly. I'm sorry, Daniela, for all the times I took her side against you, for not seeing what was really happening. The simple apology meant more than I could express. Thank you, I said, emotion tightening my throat. That means a lot. We parted with a new understanding, a fragile alliance formed from shared disillusionment. As I walked back to my office, my phone buzzed with a text from my cousin Amanda asking if we could meet for coffee. Apparently, the family grapevine was working overtime in the aftermath of the birthday dinner fiasco. Over the next week, I had similar conversations with several family members. Amanda revealed that she had loaned my mother $15,000 2 years ago, money she now desperately needed as her husband's real estate business struggled. Uncle David confirmed he was owed nearly $90,000 in loans dating back over a decade. Even my Aunt Patricia admitted to lending my mother small amounts here and there that totaled over $12,000. The picture that emerged was disturbing. My mother had systematically borrowed from everyone in the family, playing on loyalties and often using emotional manipulation to secure funds. The family fund that had been invoked throughout my childhood had never been a communal resource. It had been a one-way transfer of wealth to my mother, who used the money to maintain appearances and fuel what increasingly seemed like compulsive spending. I connected with Lauren's therapist friend, Dr. Melissa Santos, who specialized in financial trauma and family systems. After hearing my situation, she agreed to meet with me for a consultation. What you're describing sounds like a classic case of financial abuse within a family system, she explained during our session. Your mother established herself as the financial authority, using money as a tool for control and manipulation. When family members questioned this authority, they were labeled as disloyal or selfish. That's exactly what happened, I confirmed, finding unexpected relief in having a professional validate my experience. And your brother's role as the golden child is also typical in these situations, she continued. He received approval and emotional rewards for compliance, while you, as the one who questioned the system, were cast as problematic. "So what do I do now?" I asked. "I want to help my family, especially my dad, but I don't want to get pulled back into the dysfunction." "Boundaries," she said firmly. "Clear, consistent boundaries around your financial resources, and perhaps most importantly, emotional boundaries that allow you to care about your family without feeling responsible for solving problems they created." I left the session with a clearer understanding of the dynamics at play and practical strategies for maintaining healthy boundaries while navigating the ongoing family crisis. Dr. Santos had also provided resources on financial abuse and compulsive spending that I hoped might eventually help my mother if she ever became willing to address her behavior. That evening, my father called with news my mother had agreed to meet with a financial counselor recommended by their bank. It was a small step, but a significant one the first time she had acknowledged the need for outside guidance. "I don't want to get my hopes up," he said cautiously, "but she seems genuinely shaken by Jason's decision to open his own account. I think she's realizing that her old methods of control aren't working anymore." "That's positive," I agreed. "How are things at home otherwise?" He sighed. "Tense. She blames you for turning the family against her, but I think deep down she knows this reckoning was inevitable." "And you, Dad? How are you holding up?" "Honestly, I feel like I'm waking up from a 40-year fog," he admitted. "I let this happen, Daniela. I abdicated my responsibility because it was easier than fighting her." "You can't change the past," I told him gently, "but you can make different choices going forward." "That's exactly what I'm trying to do," he said, a new resolve in his voice, starting with finally standing up for my children. As we ended the call, I felt a cautious optimism. The family system that had functioned on secrecy and control for decades was being disrupted. Change wouldn't happen overnight, and there would undoubtedly be resistance and setbacks, but the first critical steps had been taken. I opened my laptop and returned to the financial plan I had developed, making adjustments based on new information gathered over the past week. Whatever happened with my mother, I was committed to helping my father find a path toward financial stability. Not by sacrificing my own security, but by offering structured support and guidance that would empower rather than enable. The journey ahead would be difficult, but for the first time I felt confident in my ability to navigate it without compromising my hard-won independence. The birthday toast that had been intended to reassert my mother's control had instead become the catalyst for liberation, not just for me, but potentially for my entire family. 6 months after my mother's birthday dinner, I stood in front of a group of women at a community center in Boston, concluding my presentation on financial literacy. "Remember, financial independence isn't just about how much money you have," I told them. "It's about having the knowledge and confidence to make your own decisions. Thank you for joining me today. I'm happy to take questions now." As hands raised around the room, I caught sight of a familiar figure slipping into the back row. My cousin Amanda smiled and gave me a small wave as I began answering questions about credit scores and emergency funds. This monthly workshop had become an unexpected positive outcome of my family's financial crisis. After helping Amanda rebuild her own finances in the wake of her husband's business difficulties, we had decided to share what we'd learned with other women in the community, many of whom had experienced financial control or abuse in their relationships. After the session concluded and the participants filtered out, Amanda approached with a hug. "That was fantastic, Daniela. You really connected with them." "Thanks for coming," I said, gathering my materials. "How's the new job going?" She beamed. "I just got a promotion, actually. 2 months in, and they're already bumping me up to senior account manager." "That's amazing," I said, genuinely thrilled for her. The financial literacy skills we had developed together had helped her secure a position at a marketing firm utilizing her business degree that had gathered dust during her years as a stay-at-home wife. "It feels good to be contributing again," she admitted. "Stephen was resistant at first, but seeing the difference in our finances has changed his mind completely." We walked together toward the small cafe adjacent to the community center, continuing our now regular tradition of post-workshop coffee. "How are things with the family?" she asked as we settled at a corner table. "I saw your mom at the grocery store last week. She seemed different." I considered the question carefully. The past 6 months had brought significant changes to my family dynamics, some painful, others surprisingly positive. "It's a work in progress," I replied honestly. Dad's doing well. He's taking financial management classes at the community college and has really stepped up. The garage is turning around now that he's implemented better accounting practices. And your mother, Amanda pressed gently. Some days are better than others, I said. The financial counseling helped with the practical issues, but the deeper patterns are harder to change. She finally agreed to see a therapist who specializes in compulsive spending, though. That's a big step. What I didn't mention was the difficult journey to that point, the weeks of resistance and blame, the tearful accusations that I had destroyed the family. It had taken a minor health scare, chest pains, that turned out to be stress-related, to finally convince my mother to seek help for the emotional issues underlying her financial behavior. And Jason, I haven't seen him at family gatherings lately. He's finding his own path, I explained. He moved out of the house 3 months ago, got his own apartment. He's taking classes in business management, thinking about his options beyond the garage. My brother's transformation had perhaps been the most surprising development. Once he broke free from our mother's influence, he had discovered ambitions and interests he had never explored. Our relationship had evolved into something I never expected, a genuine friendship based on mutual respect and shared experiences. The debt situation, Amanda asked, lowering her voice slightly. Under control, I assured her. We sold some assets, consolidated what we could, and set up payment plans for the rest. Uncle David got half of what he was owed up front with structured payments for the remainder. Most of the family loans have similar arrangements now. What I didn't detail was my own contribution to this resolution, a one-time payment to clear the most pressing debts made directly to creditors with clear conditions attached. Not a blank check to my mother, but a strategic investment in my family's financial recovery, accompanied by accountability measures and regular oversight. It sounds like you found a way to help without sacrificing your boundaries, Amanda observed. Exactly. I nodded. I'm supporting them without enabling the dysfunctional patterns. It hasn't been easy, and there are still difficult moments, but we're in a much healthier place now. Just last week, I had dinner with both my parents for the first time since the birthday incident. The atmosphere had been tentative but civil, with my father actively participating in conversation rather than deferring to my mother. She had even managed to acknowledge my recent work promotion without immediately calculating how it might benefit the family. Small steps, but significant ones. You know, Amanda said thoughtfully, your stand that night at the birthday dinner affected more than just your immediate family. It made a lot of us question dynamics we had accepted for years. The way Aunt Sandra always positioned herself as the family authority, the way we all just went along with it. I hadn't fully appreciated the ripple effects beyond my immediate family circle. I didn't set out to start a family revolution, I said with a small smile. I just couldn't keep pretending anymore. Sometimes that's exactly what a family needs, she replied. Someone brave enough to say the emperor has no clothes, or in this case that the empress has too many credit cards. I laughed, grateful for the moment of lightness in what had been a challenging journey. As we finished our coffee and prepared to leave, Amanda paused. I've been meaning to ask you something, she said. My daughter turns 16 next month, and I was wondering if you'd talk to her about money management. After watching what happened with our family, I want to make sure she starts adulthood with healthy financial habits. The request touched me deeply. I'd be honored, I told her. Walking home through the crisp October afternoon, I reflected on the profound shifts in my life since that fateful birthday toast 6 months ago. The demand that was meant to reassert control over my finances had instead sparked a reckoning that was still unfolding, not just for me, but for my entire family. I had learned that true family loyalty wasn't about blind obedience or financial sacrifice. It was about honesty, mutual respect, and sometimes having the courage to disrupt harmful patterns even when that disruption caused pain. My mother's birthday toast, intended to secure her financial control, had instead become the catalyst for my most meaningful gift to my family, the truth that set us all on paths toward authentic freedom. As I reached my apartment building, my phone buzzed with a text from Jason. Dad and I are starting a financial literacy program for the garage employees. Would you be willing to lead a session? I smiled as I typed my reply. Absolutely. Just name the date. The family fund my mother had invoked throughout my childhood had never delivered on its promise of mutual support and security. But from its ashes, something more valuable was emerging, a family built on transparency, respect, and genuine care for each other's well-being. Not because we shared bank accounts or financial resources, but because we were finally learning to share something far more precious, the truth. Life has a way of teaching us its most profound lessons when we least expect them. Standing up and walking away from my mother's 60th birthday dinner that night was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it was also the beginning of my true independence, both financially and emotionally. It's been 6 months since that evening when my mother raised her glass and demanded my entire paycheck and future bonuses for the family fund. 6 months of difficult conversations, painful realizations, and gradual healing. 6 months of learning that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is refuse to participate in unhealthy dynamics, even when that refusal is labeled as selfish or disloyal. The journey hasn't been easy. There were weeks when my mother wouldn't speak to me, when relatives took sides, when I questioned whether I had done the right thing. There were tearful phone calls from my father struggling to navigate his new role as an active participant in the family finances after decades of passive acceptance. There were strained family gatherings where tension hung in the air like a physical presence. But there were beautiful moments, too. The first time my brother Jason called me just to talk without any agenda or pressure. The afternoon my father proudly showed me his newly organized financial records determination shining in his eyes. The day my mother, in a rare moment of vulnerability, admitted she might need help with her compulsive spending habits. Through it all, I maintained my boundaries while offering appropriate support. I helped my parents develop a sustainable budget and debt repayment plan. I made strategic payments directly to creditors to alleviate the most pressing financial pressures. I connected my mother with a therapist specializing in financial disorders and my father with resources to build his financial literacy. What I didn't do was hand over control of my finances or accept blame for problems I didn't create. I didn't sacrifice my hard-earned security to enable destructive patterns. And gradually my family began to respect these boundaries, even if they didn't always understand them. My relationship with my mother remains the most complicated. There are good days when she engages genuinely with her therapy and acknowledges the harm her financial behavior caused. There are difficult days when she slips back into manipulation tactics or resentment. But even on the hard days, something fundamental has shifted. I no longer doubt my right to financial autonomy, and she no longer expects me to surrender it. My father has perhaps undergone the most remarkable transformation. At 62, he has discovered a capacity for financial management that had lain dormant during his marriage. The garage business is thriving under his more attentive oversight, and he has begun rebuilding his depleted retirement savings. Most importantly, he has found his voice in his marriage, gently but firmly, establishing new patterns of communication and decision-making with my mother. Jason and I have developed the kind of sibling relationship I always hoped for, but never expected. Free from our prescribed roles as the loyal son and selfish daughter, we've discovered a genuine friendship based on mutual respect and shared experiences. His journey toward independence continues to inspire me, particularly his courage in starting over at 37, pursuing education and career options he had never considered possible. As for me, I've found purpose in sharing what I've learned. The financial literacy workshops Amanda and I started have expanded to 3 locations across Boston, reaching women from all walks of life who are seeking to establish or reclaim their financial independence. Each time I see the light of recognition in a participant's eyes, the moment when they realize they have the right and the capacity to control their own financial destiny, I feel a sense of fulfillment that transcends any momentary family approval. I've learned that family love, when healthy, empowers rather than constrains. It celebrates individual growth rather than demanding sacrifice for the collective. It builds up rather than diminishes. This understanding has allowed me to redefine family on my own terms, creating connections based on mutual respect rather than obligation or control. The painful truth is that some family relationships may never fully heal. My mother may never completely understand or accept my boundaries. Certain relatives may continue to view my actions through a lens of perceived disloyalty. But I've made peace with these possibilities, recognizing that I cannot control others' perceptions, only my own choices and responses. What I know with absolute certainty is that walking out of that birthday dinner refusing to surrender my financial independence was an act of self-respect that changed everything. Not just for me, but for my entire family. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for others is show them through our actions that unhealthy patterns can be broken, that new ways of relating are possible, that growth is available at any age. If you're facing your own version of my mother's birthday toast, your own moment of truth regarding financial manipulation or control, I hope my story gives you courage. Your earnings belong to you. Your financial independence matters. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for authentic relationships. And sometimes the most difficult choice in the moment leads to the greatest freedom in the long run. What boundaries have you had to set in your own life? Have you experienced financial pressure from family or friends? Drop a comment below to share your story. I read everyone. If this resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more authentic stories about navigating complex family dynamics and personal growth. Share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to protect their financial well-being, even when faced with family pressure. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. Remember, true family support lifts you up. It doesn't drain your accounts.